want to take a moment to talk about Black fathers who are colorists. Brown fathers, if you're a brown girl, feel free to, listen in, because this may also apply to you as well. This commenter writes, "Thank you so much for speaking about colorist fathers. It is such a traumatizing experience, especially because you're gaslighted about it. And when you try to acknowledge the preferential treatment lighter or biracial, in my case, sisters receive." Absolutely. Let's have a conversation about it. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've worked with men and women, over many years in terms of counseling. And I also did research on studying this and on Black women specifically who experience psychological abuse by their parents while growing up. And colorism within families is a real thing. Of course, most of you already know that. But if you guys are colorists, if you guys are doing the paper bag test, or you're looking to see whose skin is lighter than this, or you're being teased about who's darker than who amongst your siblings, where do you think that's coming from? Where do you think that ideology is coming from? Most of the time, 99.9998% of the time, it is coming from your parents who have colorist ideals and views, even if they aren't explicitly stating them. And it could be overt, it could be covert in terms of, what you're seeing, where lighter skinned siblings are getting preferential treatment. And I've talked about a woman that was in my study, just as an aside, I've talked about a dark-skinned woman that was in my study, and she talked about how her, in her case, it was her mother that was a colorist, but she was dark-skinned, her sister was light-skinned, and she talked about how her mother would take her sister to go get her hair done, but her mother, every chance that she got, would call her, bald and ugly and things like that, and they lived in an apartment complex. And her mother made up a nickname for her called Baldanya, and she would just holler it out in front of all the neighbors and basically embarrass her. But she made it a point, her mother made it a point to show her how dark-skinned and unattractive she was. And so she would go out of her way, stealing, boosting, and doing all these illegal things to try and buy her mother's love and affection, because without it, she would never get it. Her mother would ignore her for being the darker-skinned child, and only take her sister places. I had a friend even once, and this was way back in the day. I had a friend, and she, I grew up in the South. We both grew up in the South, and she talked about how her mother was ashamed of her being a darker skinned or, unattractive child. And whenever, back in those days, the insurance man and people like that would come to your house and collect your money or whatever. And she talked about, when those types of people would stop by the home, her mother would stick her in the corner and put a lampshade over her, because they lived in a little house, and she didn't want her to be seen, but her mother was so embarrassed of her. In other cultures, especially in, immigrant cultures, skin bleaching is very common. You can go to any store and buy a bleaching cream, bleaching soap. It's also not uncommon for people to give their children bleach baths and things like that. I think I was like maybe 20 something when I heard about people taking bleach baths on the regular with chloride and being forced to do that, and I think, and if you're a Real Housewives person, I'm sure we've all noticed the phenomenon on the Real Housewives of Potomac, which I don't watch, but I've seen the clips, where Wendy's mother is a completely different color than what she used to be. Wendy's mother's a darker skinned Nigerian woman, but now she has done some sort of bleaching treatment, and now she's like 10 shades lighter than I am. And so, a lot of people were talking about that phenomenon, like, what is she doing? But it's all because of colorism. And that starts Again, at home, it can be reinforced by society and societal standards and pressures, but a lot of it comes from at home where you have Black fathers, maybe without even saying it overtly, but maybe just through their treatment of you and the comments about who they find beautiful or attractive. They may prefer white women or exotic women, what we call exotic women, which is women that are from another country, that kind of stuff, over Black women and children that they're with. And even when I worked in prison, I remember being told, I remember being told that, Black men, we're not going to marry a Black woman. We might have a baby with Black women, but we're not going to marry them. Ugh. It was kind of like that sort of thing. Like we would never do that. And it was so comfortable. They were so comfortable with the way they said it. It was like, I'm the idiot. Dr. Jones is the idiot because I'm the only one who's not aware of that. I'm talking like Black women and men have something in common, but they would never do that. I was like, ugh, you're contagious with some sort of bug. Ugh. But there can be also too that colorism where there's this pressure for you as the daughter to be as close to whiteness as possible. So you're pressured to dress like this, do your hair like that, do all of these things, be skinny. You're too fat. You're this, you're that. You need to look like this or that, or, forget it. I'm not paying attention to you. I don't care about you because you don't look like this or that. And I'm going to tell you something else. Those, as she mentioned in the original comment, your siblings know. Your siblings know, and yeah, they'll gaslight you, and they'll, and that's kind of what they do, to kind of pretend like they don't know, or they don't see it, or you just need to do more of this or that to get this love, acceptance, and approval, and to get money. But really, at the end of the day, they already know what they're on. And I'm going to tell you something else. And here's another little pro tip. If your father's colorist, your mother's colorist, and they're treating one child preferentially over the other, I'm going to go ahead and say it because nobody else is saying it. They're fetishizing your own children. I hate to say, especially if they're a darker skinned parent, if they're already dark and their child is light, or they want a biracial child, in your case, they're fetishizing their children. They are priming their children to be fetishized by other men. That stupid bullshit that Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, we have beautiful light-skinned children. What do you think you're doing? What do you think you're doing? And, what do you think you're doing when you say that to your children? You're priming your children to be fetishized. You're priming your child to be someone's poodle for auction. Why else would your child be more beautiful? Because they're light-skinned or they have light-colored eyes. What do you think you're doing when you're telling them that? You are priming them to be a sexual, lusted after object for how they look and nothing else. You're not priming them to actually be better than, or to actually really be treated better than, because let me tell you something, people who covet lighter skin or whatever, they fetishize and they drool over that. It's not like they're necessarily getting better treatment. Everybody is still getting the same shit-ass treatment, but all you're doing is priming them to be a sex object. And remember, if you hear this anywhere else, remember Dr. Jones said it first. So I want my credit when credit is due. But your father, if there's preferential treatment, colorist, really what he's saying is, I prefer somebody white or other. I don't really like having this whole Black experience. You guys are a reminder of where I came from and what I grew up looking at, which was a Black mother, a Black sister, and I haven't dealt with all that trauma. And so I want really to get the hell away from you, and I want you to get the hell away from me. And I don't really like this, but I'm going to punish you for for it. I'm going to beat you for it. I'm going to mistreat you for it every chance that I get. And I'm going to remind you every chance that I get that I will never love, I will never accept you because you don't fit the idea of the fetish that I want, and you don't allow me to escape from the problems that I've never been man enough to face on my own. Hope that helps. Thanks so much.